this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Mary. And you may remember that Mary belongs to many groups where she is often asked questions. And she has been asked this question recently, which she answered, but she thought it might be good for me to speak to it again because we have spoken to it previously on the vlog, but it's been many years ago. And the question is this: will tarot cards work for you if you purchase them rather than receiving them as a gift? And this question comes from the idea that is held by some people that tarot cards must be given as a gift in order to be effective. And what is my position on this? I think that's ridiculous. I know from personal experience that I've bought many decks that work perfectly fine for me. And I know many prominent tarot readers who commonly purchase their own decks as well. So if they had to be given, well, it certainly is not jiving with my experience. In my experience, you can purchase them and they work perfectly fine. Now, there's a subset to this idea, which only references the first tarot deck that a person has, that your first deck must be given to you. And what do I think of this? Well, I think it's nonsense. However, I will say that in my case, my first deck was given to me by my mother, who gave it to me some 45 years ago. And the particular deck was the Tarot of the Hoi Polloi, which was very popular at that time in the mid-70s. And it is a variation on the Waite-Smith deck that is done in a very bold 70s style that is reminiscent of stained glass, although it does not exactly copy stained glass. It's a beautiful deck, and I still use it to this day, 45 odd years later. So certainly, having them gifted to you, it can be a wonderful thing, but the problem with the idea that they must be gifted to you is how many people know people who give tarot cards as gifts. This would exclude the vast majority of people, I think, from ever being able to have tarot cards if it were true. But luckily it's not, and you can talk to all kinds of people who read tarot who bought their first deck for themselves, and it worked perfectly fine. And I am not a believer in giving lip service to ideas that don't actually work. I would consider this a superstition. And if you've studied my writings, you know that I subscribe to Plutarch's definition of superstition. That is that religion are things which are done from love of the divine, superstition are things that are done from fear of the divine. And I'm not a great believer in things being done from fear or limiting belief systems. So I would say by all means buy your tarot deck, whether it's your first or your 50th, and I think you'll find it works just fine. And I base that not on my opinion, but on my experience, both in my own life and dealing with other people. I've known many people who, even with their first deck, bought it themselves because there was no one to give it to them. And there was no other way to get it, and they had perfectly good luck with it. So why wouldn't anyone else? And as I say, in my own life, I've bought dozens and dozens of tarot decks over the years. At one time I had a sizable collection of them, and used them all with no difficulty. One of the interesting things about tarot decks, since I touch on that lightly, is that some of them are higher quality than others, and some of them will hold up to more use than others. I recall having in that collection some very beautiful decks, which after just 6 months were falling apart, and others, like the Hoi Polloi, which 45 years later is still in excellent condition, and can be read with great ease. So yes, I think that by all means, if you want to buy a deck, buy a deck. Don't wait for it to be gifted, and it makes no difference to how it's going to work. So when people tell you that it must be gifted, I'm afraid I disagree. So those are my thoughts on the matter. I hope you find them helpful, and until next time, may you blessed be. Please join me for our Correllian Peace Prayer. I pray for peace. I pray for love. I pray for stability. I pray for the nation where I live. I pray for the world. So this, by the way, is the Tarot of the Hoi Polloi, and you can see some of the designs and get an idea of what I was talking about in terms of the style that they're done in. It's very distinctly of that era, the 1970s, and very beautiful in my opinion. And the cards certainly do not in any way replicate stained glass, but the strong linear quality does kind of call upon that image, together with the color choices. So I am very pleased with this deck all my life, really. And then the back is a key representing, I would say, the goddess Hecate. I'm not entirely sure that that's what they intended it to mean, but that's how I look upon it. Hecate being the mistress of magic and divination. So that is the Hoi Polloi deck.